Iranian ballistic missiles punched through Israeli air defenses on Sunday and struck within minutes of Jerusalem. 19 people injured, homes flattened across a 150-meter blast zone. The Israeli Air Force has launched an investigation into why its interceptors failed to stop the warhead, and that wasn't the only strike that day. 6 separate Iranian salvos hit Israel on March 29th alone. One missile fragment landed inside the Neot Hovav industrial zone south of Beersheba, igniting a fire at a chemical manufacturing facility. 11,000 workers locked down in safe rooms, Highway 40 shut. A hazardous materials alert issued across the entire complex. While this unfolded, Hezbollah launched over 600 rockets from Lebanon in 24 hours. The Houthis fired ballistic missiles at Israeli territory from Yemen for the first time in this conflict. 3 fronts, simultaneous pressure, and Israel's air defense network is leaking. The town hit hardest on Saturday was Mevaseret Zion, a community in the Jerusalem corridor just west of the capital. The Israeli Air Force confirmed the incoming threat was a conventional Iranian ballistic missile carrying several hundred kilograms of high-explosive interceptors launched. They missed. The warhead detonated on impact, gutting residential structures, shredding vehicles, and cratering a parking area. Drone footage shows flattened roofs and debris scattered across the strike zone. This is the second time in 8 days that a ballistic missile has reached the ground in the Jerusalem corridor. The first was the Beit Shemesh strike on March 21st that killed 9 people sheltering inside a synagogue. But Saturday's strike wasn't isolated. The IDF detected another ballistic launch from Iran and activated air raid sirens across Jerusalem. Inside the Knesset, lawmakers were debating the 2026 state budget. The session halted. Members evacuated to shelters. The missile was intercepted this time, but the image speaks for itself. Israel's parliament mid-vote cleared because Iranian warheads were inbound over the capital. On Sunday, Iran widened its target set. A ballistic missile struck an open area inside Beersheba, landing meters from residential buildings. The blast wave shattered windows across roughly 100 homes. Some structures sustained damage severe enough that residents could not return. That strike was one of 6 to 7 separate Iranian salvos fired throughout the day, hitting southern, central, and northern Israel in sequence. Then came the strike that turned a tactical event into a strategic hazard. One of Sunday's salvos sent missile debris into the Adama Maktashim factory at the Neot Hovav industrial complex, approximately 9 to 13 kilometers south of Beersheba. Neot Hovav is one of Israel's most sensitive industrial zones. It spans roughly 80,000 dunams, employs around 11,000 workers, and houses more than 30 chemical plants, including ammonia storage facilities. The debris ignited a fire inside a pesticide manufacturing plant. Pitzik Levy, deputy head of the Israeli Fire Service's Southern District, confirmed the substance leaking was a pesticide-based chemical. The IDF Homefront Command immediately declared a hazmat event. Workers across the complex were ordered into safe rooms. Civilians in surrounding areas were instructed to seal windows, turn off air conditioning, and remain indoors. Police closed Highway 40. Fire and rescue teams worked to seal damaged storage units and prevent secondary explosions or further leaks. Adama, part of the Chinese-owned Syngenta Group, confirmed its Maktashim plant was. The facility struck. The Environmental Protection Ministry later stated there was no risk to the broader public after the fire was contained. But for hours, thick black smoke billowed over one of the most chemically concentrated sites in the country. Here's what matters. Iran did not need a direct hit on a chemical tank to force a hazardous materials lockdown across an entire industrial zone. A fragment was enough, and that's the part of this problem that interceptors alone cannot solve. Most people assume the system failing over these strikes is Iron Dome. It's not. Iron Dome handles short-range rockets and mortars from Gaza and Lebanon. It was never built to engage Iranian ballistic missiles arriving from over 1,500 kilometers away. The system responsible for that mission is David's Sling, a medium-range interceptor manufactured by Rafael Advanced Defense Systems. David's Sling sits 1 tier above Iron Dome in Israel's layered defense architecture. It was originally designed for heavy rockets and cruise missiles, not long-range ballistic threats, in early February. The Defense Ministry announced David's Sling had completed upgraded testing. Rafael's CEO, Yov Tomer, described new capabilities across a wide range of challenging scenarios. Weeks later, those capabilities failed their first real combat test. On March 21st, Iranian ballistic missiles struck Arad and Dimona after failed Israeli interceptions. Reuters reported 31 people hospitalized in Arad, including 9 seriously. 5 more were hospitalized in Dimona. Broader reporting put total injuries from that wave above 115. Israeli officials confirmed the missiles carried conventional warheads. So why did Israel use David's Sling instead of Arrow 3? Its top-tier system designed to kill ballistic missiles outside Earth's atmosphere. Arrow 3 launches its interceptor into space. At that altitude, debris burns up on re-entry. Clean elimination. David's Sling intercepts warheads inside the atmosphere during terminal descent, close to the ground. When David's Sling hits, interceptor shrapnel still falls onto Israeli territory. When it misses, the warhead arrives unopposed, and there's no window for a second attempt. The answer is cost. Israeli reporting puts the cost of a David Sling interceptor at roughly 1 million shekels. An Arrow 3 interceptor costs just over 2 million shekels. The Wall Street Journal reported that Israel has begun conserving its premium interceptors and rotating in cheaper alternatives. A senior security official told the Israeli financial publication Calculus that the definitive answer is the Arrow 3 system. That's what it was engineered for, but to defend against Iranian ballistic missiles. You need to intercept them outside the atmosphere. Former Israeli Air and Missile Defense Commander Ran Kochev told The Washington Post the failures could involve radar faults, interceptor defects, connectivity failures between defense layers, or basic probability. Kochev called it a very sophisticated system, but not a hermetic one. There's another dimension that makes the interceptor. Problem worse, Israeli military officials cited by Reuters said that about half of the Iranian missiles fired since the war began have carried cluster warheads. Reuters reported these warheads typically break into about 24 submunitions at an altitude of roughly 7 to 10 kilometers. Once the bomblets release, officials and analysts say they are effectively no longer interceptable. That's why high-altitude interceptions matter so much. Most people think this is a two-front war between Iran and Israel. The reality is that Israel is absorbing simultaneous fire from 3 directions, and the Lebanon front is producing more raw volume than the Iranian salvos. Hezbollah fired more than 600 rockets, mortars, and drones at Israeli targets in a single 24-hour window this past week. The IDF confirmed that figure. The previous record was roughly 300 during the 2023 to 2024 border conflict. Hezbollah doubled it since formally entering this war on March 2nd. Hezbollah has been averaging 100 to 150 attacks per day. The casualties from Lebanon are real. Staff Sergeant Ori Greenberg, 21, of the Golani Brigade's reconnaissance unit, was killed in a firefight with Hezbollah operatives in southern Lebanon on March 26. Sergeant Moshe Yitzchak Kako Hekahan Katz, 22, a lone soldier from New Haven, Connecticut, serving in the Paratroopers Brigade's 890th Battalion, was killed by a Hezbollah rocket on March 28. 3 other paratroopers were moderately wounded in the same strike in a separate incident that same day. Approximately 20 soldiers were injured by Hezbollah rocket fire. 7 moderately, including a lieutenant colonel from the elite Yahalom Combat Engineering Unit. Channel 12 tallied over 78,000 warning sirens across Israel since February 28. In Safed, an 11-year-old girl went into cardiac arrest during an incoming siren and had to be resuscitated by paramedics. 1 civilian was killed by Hezbollah rockets in Nahariya. Hezbollah even launched missiles at central Israel, claiming it targeted the IDF Skiria headquarters in Tel Aviv. The IDF said those were intercepted. But a woman suffered a moderate head injury while rushing for shelter, and on March 28, Yemen's Houthis opened a third axis. For the first time in this conflict, Houthi forces launched ballistic missiles directly at Israel, triggering sirens in Beersheba. A second missile targeted Eilat. The Houthis vowed to continue until aggression against the resistance front stops. Iran from the east, Hezbollah from the north, the Houthis from the south. Meanwhile, Iran's URG struck Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia on March 27 and destroyed at least 1 E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft A. $500 million flying command center that coordinates combat across entire theaters. 3 KC-135 Stratotanker refueling aircraft were also destroyed. The Associated Press reported more than 24 U.S. airmen wounded. Since February 28, Iran has hit at least 17 U.S. military facilities across the region, targeting radar and sensor installations. 13 U.S. service members are dead. More than 300 have been wounded. The Pentagon consumed $5.6 billion in munitions during the first 48 hours of the campaign alone. Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of U.S. Central Command, confirmed American forces have struck over 11,000 targets inside Iran, but acknowledged that Iranian fire continues. Now here are the interceptor economics that nobody wants to calculate out loud. An Arrow 3 interceptor costs $650,000 per shot. David's Sling costs $320,000. A THAAD interceptor, the American backup deployed in the region, costs approximately $15 million. Iran's ballistic missiles cost a fraction of any of those numbers to build and launch. Every single exchange bleeds the defense budget at a multiple of what Tehran spends on offense. That ratio doesn't correct itself. It compounds. The global economic blast radius is widening alongside the military one. The Strait of Hormuz, the waterway carrying 20% of the world's seaborne oil, has been functionally shut since March 4th. Gulf production has fallen by at least 10 million barrels per day. The International Energy Agency labeled this the greatest global energy security challenge in history. The U.S. and allies released 400 million barrels from strategic petroleum reserves, the largest drawdown ever attempted, but geopolitical strategist Marco Papik of BCA Research estimates the world will hit what he called an oil cliff by mid-April, when those emergency reserves and exemptions expire. Diesel across the European Union rose 20%, breaking past €2 per liter. In America, diesel jumped 25%. Iran also struck aluminum smelters in the way in Bahrain, knocking 19% of Alba's annual capacity offline in a region that supplies 9% of global aluminum, and Kuwait, which sources 99% of its drinking water through strait-fed desalination, now faces a looming humanitarian emergency as Iranian strikes have damaged that infrastructure. Day 30. An Iranian missile strike penetrating near Jerusalem. Multiple casualties in Mevaseret Zion. Sirens sounding again around the capital. A hazardous industrial fire at the Adama Makdashim plant in Neot Hovav after missile debris struck the site. Heavy Hezbollah fire continuing from Lebanon. The Houthis opening a southern axis. Iran striking Prince Sultan Air Base and wounding U.S. personnel. Oil markets under severe stress as the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed. 30 days in, the Iranian government is still standing, still launching, and still imposing a mounting cost on every layer of the coalition trying to stop it.